The poem Kubla Khan, or A Vision in a Dream, by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. A poet ought not to pick Nature's pocket. Let him borrow, and so borrow as to repay by the very act of borrowing. Examine nature accurately, but write from recollection, and trust more to the imagination than the memory. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a leader of the British Romantic movement, English poet, literary critic, philosopher, and theologian, who, with his friend William Wordsworth, was a founder of the Romantic movement in England. He is a member of the Lake Poets. The Lake Poets were a group of English poets who all lived in Lake District of England. He helped to introduce German idealist philosophy to English-speaking culture. Samuel Taylor Coleridge was born on October 21, 1772, in Devonshire, England. In 1795, Coleridge met William Wordsworth, and the two spent much time discussing poetry, politics, and philosophy. Both were regarded as founders of Romantic movement in England. What is Romanticism? Romanticism can be said as the reawakening of Middle Age. It is not political, but an intellectual movement. Romantic writers are concerned with nature, human feelings, compassion for mankind, freedom of the individual. It was a rebellion against society. The basic idea of Romanticism is that the reason cannot explain everything. It is primary importance of the free expression of the feelings of the artist. Romanticism in literature was a rejection of many of the values movements such as the Enlightenment and scientific revolution held as paramount. Unlike Enlightenment thinkers, Romantics search for deeper, often subconscious appeals. The important feature associated with Romanticism is focus on nature. It is not just a simple fascination but a deep respect. It says about the interaction between man and nature. According to Coleridge, a poet ought not to pick nature's pocket. Let him borrow, and so borrow as to repay by the very act of borrowing. Examine nature accurately, but write from recollection, and trust more to the imagination than the memory. Kubla Khan, Love, Frost at Midnight, and Christabel were the important poems of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Kubla Khan. Who was Kubla Khan? Kubla Khan was fifth Khan or emperor of the Mongol Empire in China. Xanadu is the capital of the Kubla Khan. Coleridge wrote this poem after he experienced an opium-influenced dream after reading a work describing Xanadu, that is the capital city of Kubla Khan. It was his travel book by Samuel Purchas. Coleridge was reading a travel book by Samuel Purchas which describing Xanadu, the capital city of Kubla Khan. He had drunk opium and there was an opium-experienced dream. He started writing the poem that was his dream, but was interrupted by a person from Porlock. Porlock is a coastal village in England, and person from Porlock means an unwelcome visitor to Samuel Taylor Coleridge during his composition of the poem Kubla Khan in 1797. Person from Porlock, man from Porlock, or just Porlock are used as literary allusions to unwanted intruders who disrupt inspired creativity. Coleridge was writing the poem. The poem could not be completed due to the intruder. He forgot the lines. He left it unpublished until 1860. He wrote this in 1797 and published in 1860. Coleridge began with the allusion of Xanadu, real history, but in poem gradually stepping away to imagination. The poem Kubla Khan create landscape that could not exist in reality. The poem begins with a reference to a real place called Xanadu, but gradually it's stepping away to imagination. It describes the landscape that could not exist in reality. It used unusual elements. The poem is the product of strong imagination. The poet's creativity is celebrated. Xanadu is a mysterious magical place in the poem Kubla Khan, where the unusual is to be expected. According to critics, Kubla Khan is one of the Coleridge's three great poems along with the rhyme of the Ancient Marina and Christabel, and it is one of the most famous examples of the Romanticism in English poetry. Even though the poem is a fragment, it itself seems complete. The poet described the stately pleasure dome built in Xanadu according to the decree or order of Kubla Khan. The stately pleasure dome, a beautiful palace, is built according to the decree of Kubla Khan. Decree means order, according to the order of Kubla Khan. Where it is built? Where it was built? It was built where Alph, the sacred river. River is sacred. Here poet shows its respect to the nature. River is sacred. Where Alph, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to sunless sea. Actually, there was no river called Alph in China or Mongolia. It is about poet imagination. And Alph ran through caverns. Caverns means a large cave or underground chamber. And these caverns are measureless to man. So it's an unusual usage. And it down to a sunless sea. It is a place where no sun shines. Here poet is creating a landscape that could not exist in real. By the usage, measureless to man, down to sunless sea. Sunless sea and measureless caverns are unusual usage. The first stanza start by referring a real place, Xanadu. After poet used his own imagination to create an unusual landscape. So 5 miles of fertile ground, with walls and towers were girdled round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. And here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spot of greenery. In the next stanza, poet is describing about the garden around the palace. There is a fertile land covering 5 miles, that is 10 miles, that was enclosed with walls and tower. Girdled round. Girdle means encircled. That was encircled with the walls and tower. Cavern was measureless, but the fertile land is measured here, 25 miles. And there were gardens bright with sinuous rills. Sinuous means having many curve and turn. Sinuous. And rills means small stream. It is about a twisty stream. And the garden is blossomed with incense-bearing trees, sweet-smelling trees, sweet-smelling trees. And forests enfolding sunny spot of greenery. And here were forests ancient as the hills. He used the word ancient. Primeval forest as old as the hills. And it enfolding sunny spot of greenery. Forest enfolding sunny spot of greenery. The poet created a vague romantic place, using the phrases deep romanticism, side-to-side garden trees, savage place, and the savage place as holy and enchanted. And it is beneath a waning moon. And this place was haunted by a woman who was wailing, who was crying and waiting for her dumb lover. From this chasm, a fountain glowed, with ceaseless turmoil seething, ceaseless, endless turmoil with great disturbance, intense anger. So this ceaseless turmoil seething, this line describes the violent nature of the water. And here as if this earth in vast expanse were breathing. Here the trembling earth appeared like a man breathing hard. Earth is described as a breathing animal by Coleridge, due to the violent force of nature, amid whose swift half-intermittent burst. Swift, happening quickly, intermit, discontinue. and huge fragment bolted like rebounding hail. So Coleridge wanted to describe the power of water. He used the simile rebounding hail. Hail means frozen ice. It's bolted like a rebounding hail. The river is bouncing at the rocks as hail. Bouncing at the rocks as hail. The water fell into the ground in all directions like a hailstone from the sky, or like a chaff flying about when crushed with a flail. Flail means a threshing tool. Thresher, a machine or a person separate grain from corn. The rocks are dancing, and it flung up momentarily the sacred river. It moved always. In this stanza, description of river Alph shows how powerful it is. River Alph flowed 5 miles through forest and valley and fell into the lifeless ocean. The feature of the ocean is absence of life. And to the measureless caverns, and sang in tumult to a lifeless ocean. Tumult means a great confusing voice. And the river created a great roaring sound when it fell into the ocean. Kubla Khan heard ancestors' prophecy of war amidst these sounds. The shadow of the beautiful palace, the shadow of the dome of decree, is casting on the ocean, and it floated midway on the waves. And where poet heard mingled sound from the fountain and the caves. From the fountain and the caves, poet heard mixed sound of river. From the fountain and the caves. And it is a sunny area, but dome is frozen with caves of ice. A sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. The area is very sunny, but it is frozen with caves of ice. It's a miracle. A sunny area that is frozen. Both phrases contrast each other. It is a sunny area, but frozen with caves of ice. This is an example of extreme fantasy of the world in which Kubla Khan lives. A sunny pressure dome with caves of ice. Extreme fantasy. Now poet start to describe another vision. In a vision, poet saw a damsel. Damsels mean young unmarried woman with a dulcimer, a musical instrument. Dulcimer means a musical instrument. Poet saw an unmarried woman playing a musical instrument called a dulcimer. She was an Abyssinian maid. Abyssinia is an old name of Ethiopia. She was a native of Abyssinia. Maid means female domestic servant. She was an Abyssinian maid, and she was singing about a place called Mount Deborah. It was a fantastical place that was made by Coleridge. In another vision, poet saw a damsel. Damsel means a young unmarried woman with a dulcimer, that is a musical instrument, and she was an Abyssinian maid, and she was singing about Mount Deborah, a mythical place created by Coleridge. Her symphony and song to such deep delight it would win me that with music loud and long I would build that dome in air. The music of Abyssinian maid inspired him to create amazing things. His imagination was seized by the power of her music. Poet longed to recreate the pleasure dome of Kubla Khan in air. Poet makes things in air by words. They use sounds to express their imagination. If he could remember her song, he could build his own pleasure dome in the air. That sunny dome, those caves of ice. He could build everything. And all who heard should see them there. Harold Bloom suggests that the power of the poetic imagination, stronger than the nature or art, fills the narrator and grants him the ability to share this vision with others through his poetry. The poet elevated to an awesome mythical status. The poet feels inspired feeling of Abyssinian maid will enable him to reproduce the Xanadu and the palace in the air, together with that sunny domes and those caves of ice. And now poet says about a terrifying figure. All who heard the song will shout, "Beware, beware." There is a terrifying figure with flashing eyes and floating hair. The creative figure became a source of terror because people perform rituals to protect themselves, weave a circle round him thrice as a superstition, and they close their eyes with a holy dread. Dread means fear. With fear they close their eyes. And that figure becomes so powerful by eating honeydew and drinking the milk of paradise. Who is that terrifying figure? Poet doesn't say exactly. He might be talking about himself, or it may be the final vision of Kubla Khan. The Kubla Khan now turned into some kind of terrifying figure. It became like God by eating honeydew and drinking the milk of paradise. The poet had tasted the nectar of divine poetic inspiration. The theme of the poem is the author's fascination with a dream vision and its transformation into poetry. Coleridge used vivid imagination to create a landscape that could not exist in real life. It is a magical landscape. The whole poem is pervaded by an atmosphere of dream, and it remains in the dream. The poem is the finest example of pure poetry removed from any intellectual content. The power of imagination is the important component of the poem. The poem celebrates the creativity. Through use of imagination, the poem is able to discuss the landscape, river, war. Poem is finest example of romantic poetry. Its vision is dreamy setting. It is different from the rational logical world of European Enlightenment. Unlike Enlightenment thinkers, romantic go for a deeper and subconscious appeal. It shows deep respect and passion for the nature. Landscape and solitary people in the poem highlight the idea of lone individual. Alliteration, repetition of the same consonants at the very beginning of words. Kubla Khan, KK, Dom Decree, DD, measureless to man, MM, mingled measure, MM, sunless sea, SS, 5 miles of fertile, FF, sunny spot, SS, from the fountain, FF. Assonance, repetition of vowel sound, twice 5 miles, twice 5 miles, I. Fast thick pants, A. 5 miles, I. And rhyme, Khan, drawn, decree, C. Ground, drown, rills, hills, slanted, enchanted, haunted, seething, breathing, hail, flay, ever, river, motion, ran, man, ocean, far, war, pleasure, measure, waves, case, device, eyes, and rebounding hail is an example for simile. Thank you, share and subscribe. Thank you, share and subscribe.